Assalamu alaikum everyone, those who just joined us. This is the third day of our workshop and we would be looking at the essay component of SAT English section. And when I say that we would be looking at the essay component, sometimes whenever I come across students, I felt that they usually want to avoid taking this component, and they are usually very fearful of the fact that how they're going to perform. It just creates fear in their mind. So today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be sharing a lot of ways in which you could make your essay effective. Then I'm also going to share a student response with you that scored a very good, that scored really well on their on the essay part. So we would be looking at a sample essay as well. So this is the agenda for today, guys. First of all, we would be getting ourselves introduced to the SAT essay component. What is it like? What does it require you to do? And then we would be looking at the scoring. I'm going to go into the details of how the student responses are scored, and then SAT essay prompt would also be discussed with you, that how we are going to understand the instructions given within the prompt so that we are able to apply them when we would be writing our essay. Then the breakdown, what exactly is the scoring like, how is it broken down into different criteria, and then the structure of the essay. What exactly should your essay look like? Lastly, what the SAT essay is not. So the do's and don'ts would also be discussed. And of course, what you're not supposed to do, what should not be there in your essay, we're also going to focus on that. So this is the agenda for today. All right. So first of all, introduction to the SAT essay. All right. So the purpose of the new SAT essay is to assess your ability to analyze an author's argument. To write a strong essay, you will need to focus on how the author uses evidence, reasoning, and other rhetorical techniques to build an argument and make it convincing. So in simpler words, what is the essay demanding you to do? What does the essay expect from you people when you're writing? What does the examiner look for in your essay? So your argument in the essay should be based on what the author has stated in the passage. You have to provide an argument. Your essay needs to have an analysis of the argument of the passage. So we will be understanding it more in depth when we are going to look at some examples, of course. So you have to use your critical thinking skills, your analytical skills. You have to analyze an argument that is already presented in the passage. This is something very important that I should mention over here, that in your essay, the first and foremost thing that, of course, you should be able to manage your time very effectively. We'll discuss about that as well. But another thing is that when you're writing your essay, it's not a summary of the passage that you have just read. It's not even what you could say, you're not going to, use material from within the passage to just, highlight facts that are being stated in the passage. What the SAT essay is all about is your analysis. How well have you analyzed if the author has done justice and made his claims believable, credible enough so that the reader could put faith in them and present an argument upon them. So you are giving your opinion based on the author's argument. Do you think he has done justice to his essay, to the passage, sorry. So your essay, your response to the passage should examine the author's choices in presenting the argument rather than the informational content of the passage. So like I said, you're not expected to summarize the passage. You're not expected to rewrite the entire passage in your own words. That's not the purpose of the SAT essay. You will want to discuss how the author assembles the argument rather than restate what the argument is. So if, let's say, the author has written a passage about global warming, and he presents facts and statistics related to it, and then he makes his claims believable, he actually leaves an impact on you as a reader or as the audience. So you are going to say that, you are going to analyze that, and you're going to put that information in your essay, that this is what made the claims believable, and this is the reason why the reader would want to take an action. So you have to look for this supporting evidence from the passage, which makes you believe what the author is trying to state within the passage. So, guys, this is the most important information that I would like to highlight over here, that your essay is not a summary, it's rather an analysis of the argument of the author's passage. Moving on, the essay portion is optional but compulsory for LUMs. Of course, it's mandatory for LUMs. You do not have an option to skip the essay. You have to attempt it. And from my personal experience, what I suggest is that among all three components of the SAT English section, I feel that if you practice essay enough, it would be the easiest. Keeping in mind the time that's given, keeping in mind that you have to present your own argument, the passage is also sometimes very interesting, and this is I think with practice you would eventually learn that essay component is not as challenging as the other two components. So try to keep this in mind and see if it works for you. So passages are authentic texts that have been published previously. So guys, the information that's there in a passage, it is basically authentic, it's non-fictional. So once again, sometimes you come across passages that are very interesting. So I believe that I could give you an example, that I read this passage on a global phenomenon, and it grabbed my interest. As a reader, I was absorbed into the information that was provided. So sometimes that happens. The passage could be based on any particular phenomenon that might be of interest to you. So you must read and produce a written analysis. As already stated earlier, the passage has to be analyzed, and your essay has to be a written analysis, a written, you could say, a document which analyzes your passage that you have just read. Not write your opinion, but construct an argument. Over here, some students say that if you're not going to express our opinion, then how are we going to analyze if the argument presented by the author is good enough, is believable enough, makes sense? When we say do not write your own opinion, it actually means that of course you are going to analyze. As a reader, you are looking at how the author has done justice to what argument he's presenting in the passage. But the thing is that when you're writing the essay, it has to be written in a language, it has to be written in a way that it does not give a personalized touch. For example, if you say that dogs are very friendly, let's say if the author has written a passage about dogs, and somewhere it says that dogs are very loyal, they're friendly and all of that. So what you are supposed to do is, keeping in mind the author's point of view, you are just going to stick to that, and you as a general person, as a general reader, as a general part of the audience, you would be presenting your argument. You're not going to say that I also believe that dogs are friendly. This I could say from my personal experience. So this is where you are putting your own opinion within the essay. Do not do that. Your personal opinion is not required when you use the pronouns I, we, or let's say me, my. These should be avoided. So first person writing should be avoided within the essay. Try to make it more generalized. You will see that in the sample essay that I'm going to read out to you, that nowhere does the student has used pronouns like I, me, my, myself. So please try to avoid those. First person narrative should be avoided. All right. Use textual evidence to support main ideas. Now, this means that although you're not going to be writing the information, you're not going to be rewriting the information from within the passage, but when you are stating something that you're analyzing from within the passage, you can quote you can paraphrase a line or anything specific from the passage so that it makes your essay more coherent, more understandable for the examiner. The examiner is definitely going to is definitely going to look for details as to how the student has analyzed. So if, for example, you say that the facts that are being used in the passage make the reader believe in the claims of the author, so you need to state a fact or two from within the passage. You could paraphrase them, you could write a direct quotation within speech marks. So that shows that you've actually, taken out bits from within the passage, and you know what exactly are you stating within the essay. So that, that flow within the essay is extremely important. So keep that in mind, that textual evidence does not mean that we are asking you to write down the entire passage in your own words. Just a few quotes wherever you feel that the evidence is very strong given by the author in the passage. So you could take, textual evidence, a quote, or paraphrase a line from the passage in your essay. Next, evaluation based on the skill shown in reading, analysis, and writing. So basically, reading, analysis, and writing, three things on which you're going to be, evaluated. You could say the three criteria on which your essay depends, your scoring depends. Raw, reading, analysis, and writing. So RAW, keep this in mind. I'll explain more of this later. Each SAT essay consists of one passage between 650 and 750 words that you will read and then respond to. You will have 50 minutes to complete the SAT essay. Yes, so a passage would be around this length, 650 to 750 words, and you will be reading and responding to this particular passage that you would have. You will have 50 minutes to complete the SAT essay, so the time is short, but not, I won't say that it's not enough. If you have good analytical skills, you're focusing on the concrete information from within the passage, then of course it won't take you long to write down an analysis of the passage. So it's not difficult to manage your time in an essay. In an ideal situation, of course, your essay should be finished 5 to 10 minutes earlier so that you could actually go through it once again and see if anything needs to be added or if anything needs to be corrected. There could be a grammatical error. So all of these things could be managed, keeping in mind the time that's given. All right, so moving on. Now the SAT essay scoring. I already mentioned the grading criteria: reading, analysis, and writing. As you can see, there are 4 marks for each of these criteria. The reading criteria also has 4 marks. The analysis criteria also has 4 marks. And the writing criteria also has 4 marks. So what happens over here is that usually your essay is actually graded by 2 examiners. So then the average of the grading done by the 2 examiners is what your score is like. So your score is supposed to be out of 12, but because 2 examiners are checking it, so it's out of 24. So because there's an average of the 2 scores from the 2 examiners. So this is the grading criteria and the scoring on the SAT essay. Now here we have the prompt. The prompt is basically the information, the requirement of the essay that you would be writing. Let's look at one. So here is like these lines that are given on top are basically the last few lines of a passage, and after this is the box that has the prompt. So let's read the prompt. I'm going to read it out to you. It says, write an essay in which you explain how Peter S. Goodman builds an argument to persuade his audience that news organizations should increase the amount of professional foreign news coverage provided to people in the United States. In your essay, Analyze how Goodman uses one or more of the features listed in the box above or features of your own choice to strengthen the logic and persuasiveness of his argument. Be sure that your analysis focuses on the most relevant features of the passage. So, this is the prompt, and you can see that Peter S. Goodman builds an argument and how he has been able to do justice to the passage that he has written, how he has made his claim believable and credible enough so that the audience could believe in it, and then how he has persuaded the reader to understand and believe in what he's trying to emphasize on. So, this is some information as to how you would be structuring your essay. You have to analyze by using features from a list that would be given. I'll show that to you how this the passage is written in the SAT essay section, and then what are the things that are given on top. So you have to present your argument to strengthen the logic and persuasiveness of his argument. How has the author used different ways, different techniques to make sure that the reader believes in his claim? So, your analysis should focus on the most relevant features of the passage. I'll talk about this as well. The most relevant features of the passage. Try not to look for implicit information when you're presenting your analysis, because at times when the examiner is going through your essay, he might come across something that it's difficult for him to find out from within the passage. So try not to go into the depth of what the author is saying, but to the most stick to the most obvious details given in the passage and analyze your argument based on them. Because sometimes we tend to do this, that we feel that the author has written something in the passage in a mood, and we try to grab that kind of space where we want to understand that how the author is trying to present his analysis, what is the impact that he's trying to leave, and then we try to look for implicit information. Okay, maybe the author was thinking like this over here, and maybe this is the reason why I should believe in him. Don't do this. Stick to the most obvious details. For example, if the author has presented facts and statistics in the passage, or if the author has quoted something from his personal experience, those are very obvious details. Try to use those, because the more lucid it is for the examiner to see how well you have presented the argument and what are the supporting details that you have used from the passage, the more easier for you to score well in the essay section. So stick to the most obvious, the most relevant features of the passage. All right, so this was about the prompt. Now the breakdown. As I already mentioned, the three criteria: reading, analysis, and writing. So these three criteria, let's see what exactly is the examiner going to grade you on when he's going to go analyze you based on these three criteria. So the first one is reading, 4 marks. I've already mentioned this. Understanding, comprehension of the text. How well has the student understood the passage? How well has the student grasped the main theme of the passage? Then next, show that you have grasped the main idea in the first paragraph. Usually what happens is that when we are writing the essay, uh, we divide it into paragraphs, of course, and the first paragraph is definitely the introductory paragraph. So this introductory paragraph needs to make it very clear to the examiner that you have understood, you have grasped the main idea of the passage within the very first paragraph. So try to introduce the main idea of the passage in the first paragraph. We'll see how you could do that in the example student essay that I will be sharing. Have you used textual evidence, paraphrasing, direct quotation, or both effectively to demonstrate your understanding? So, if you feel that a particular statistic is going to make a reader believe in the claims of the author about, let's say, global warming, then you need to state that fact, or maybe you need to paraphrase that fact, or just quote it as a direct quotation within the speech marks in your essay. So you could do that, of course, and that actually shows that you have command of evidence, you have looked for evidence from within the passage, and that is what you are analyzing. Next, we have analysis. The most tricky, I would say, the most challenging part, the most challenging criteria. It's hard to present your analysis effectively, but at the same time, it's not impossible. It's not something that we all are very good at analysis at times. We tend to analyze things that are happening around us. We tend to give our own opinion. In the essay, we have to argue, we have to present an argument on what the author is saying. So I think that if we practice it well, we can actually do this part really, really effectively, and it won't be a problem for us. So analysis is stylistic, persuasive elements. I'm going to be discussing the persuasive elements also, and then I'll move on. What are persuasive elements? As the name suggests, to persuade. What are the different ways that the author has used in his passage? So I've already mentioned facts and statistics. Usually authors, they tend to use figures, numbers, because they are the most credible source of information, so that the reader could actually put faith in what the author is stating. And then another form of persuasive element is, I would say, it could be a personal anecdote. It's like a story, a short story from the author's personal experience or the personal experience of any person that the author knows. And he usually states that within the passage. And then, when you usually what happens, it's human nature that humans put more belief and more faith in what somebody else has experienced, because they can connect themselves with the experience of another person. So this also leaves the author at an advantage. If he's going to use a personal anecdote, a personal experience, and he quotes that in the passage, this could be also be a persuasive element and something that you could use as evidence to base your argument on. So this is another way of how you could persuade your audience. And then another way to persuade your audience could be with the use of the words, vivid language. Sometimes we use similes, we use metaphors, and we want the reader to believe in us, and we use language that could actually make the reader picture the scene or the situation in his mind, and that is when the reader is completely absorbed into the content of the passage. So this is like an icing on the cake. So if you're using similes and metaphors, vivid language, and you do not have enough evidence in the passage, you do not seem to find enough evidence within the passage, then vivid language could be a persuasive element that you could focus on. And most of the times vivid language is used when you do not have any other strong means of convincing your audience. So but vivid language could also be used with stats and facts and statistics. So it totally depends on what the content of the passages. Then another way in which the author could make it could use persuasive elements is when he is trying to use emotions, when he is trying to emotionally affect the reader. So sometimes we come across emotional statements, rhetorical questions we know the answer to, but we tend to get emotional over there. For example, the author says, he talks about something in a passage, and then he says, um, if we are not going to do this, we're all going to die. Now this is exaggeration in a way, but then again, this is also, you could say, it's a form of persuasion in which the author is trying to make the reader emotional. The author is trying to convince the reader to take an action, immediate action. So this is where the author is making his claim believable in a way. And we also call this way pathos. In the literature vocabulary, we use the word pathos when the author is trying to make his claims believable by using emotional statements, by trying to make the reader emotional. That is when the author is using pathos in his passage. Okay, stylistic persuasive elements, I have given some examples to you. Next is arguments, types of evidences, and perspectives explored. What exactly are you trying to look for when you're reading the passage? And then what are the most key elements that you have found out within the passage that you're going to put your analysis, you're going to base your analysis on? So, those perspectives, those ideas from within the passage that you are going to be analyzing, that you're going to be uh, putting into perspective in the essay, are the things on which you're going to be scored. So that is just like you're presenting your argument based on the claims that the author has made. Why do you think those claims are believable? Why do you think those claims should be taken into perspective? Where is the author using a persuasive element to make that particular claim believable? All of these things fall under this category. And this is part of your analysis. And when your analysis is strong, there is a high chance that you get a good score. Of course, combined with good language, good vocabulary. By good vocabulary, I don't mean that you are supposed to use a lot of flowery language. I'll talk about this in the next criteria that we are going to see. For now, analysis, references, tone, level of expertise. When we are reading a passage, we also observe the mood, the tone, the impact of what the passage is all about, and we tend to understand that what might be the mood of the writer, the author, when he was writing down this passage. So that is the tone of the passage. It could be sarcastic, it could be satirical, it could be based on we could say it could be humorous also. The tone could be anything, but it might be something that is trying to convince you at as the that's the main purpose of the passage. So references, of course, you're supposed to provide references from within the passage, and then the reader also observes that the author has provided a reference. The author has also used imagery. The author has used some sort of we could say, I've already mentioned personal experience, personal anecdotes. Those could also be there in the passage, or a rhetorical question to which we know the answer, but the author is just trying to make the reader emotional at that point. Okay, does your essay employ relevant and well chosen details and features from the passage to support your own claims? Now, this is what is very important in the analysis, that whatever details you've chosen from the passage, those are relevant, and you are supporting the claims that you have made based on the author's argument in the passage. So you should have the details should be very, very carefully chosen from the passage. The most obvious, the most relevant details should be chosen, and you should be supporting the claims made in your essay based on the claims made in the author's passage. So nothing should be there that is outside information. Yes, this brings me to another important point. Students sometimes they put outside information on their essay because they think it relates to the topic. If I know something about eclipse, let's say if a passage is based on solar and lunar eclipse, and I know some facts, I know some statistics that how solar and lunar eclipse affects people, and I want to quote that in my essay just to create an impression that the examiner would think, oh, ये तो बड़ा knowledgeable बच्चा है. ऐसा कुछ नहीं होता. Outside information is strictly a big no, because if there is outside information, then what about your argument based on the passage? What about the argument of the author who has written the passage? So do not provide any extra or outside information. Stay strictly in the context of the passage. Present your argument in the essay strictly based on the content of the passage. Nothing should be there that presents your own opinion, your own claim, your own experience, your own information. Please do not put that into the essay. Your information in the essay has to come from the passage and from nowhere else. All right. So this is about the analysis. Now the last criteria: writing, structure of the essay, language, grammar, sentence structures, flow of arguments. I can't stress enough on the importance of organizing your content in the essay. Flow is supposed to be there with the help of the paragraphs. Try to use transitional words to create smooth transitions from one sentence to another. Because when somebody is reading your essay and you are making abrupt changes from one sentence to another, and you're not connecting the ideas in an organized manner, the examiner would feel that this person is not able to do justice to his argument, to his analysis in the essay. And this is the reason why students, they do not score well on the essay. Try to practice the essay using ideas in which you could create flow in your paragraphs. Your transitions from one idea to another, they should be done smoothly. Do not rush into new ideas again and again, because this is a really wrong approach. When you're writing an essay, we have been writing essays, we have been writing paragraphs as a student since our school life, and we always have this thing in our mind that we have to use excellent language, excellent vocabulary, there should be no grammatical error. But we tend to focus less on the idea that whatever we are writing also needs to have a flow. So this is also very important, that whatever argument you are presenting in your essay needs to have a very, very articulate expression, and easy for the examiner to understand, but at the same time effective in presenting your ideas to the examiner. So please make sure that whatever language, grammar you're using, first of all, try to avoid spelling errors, try to avoid punctuation errors, because that also leaves a very bad impression on the examiner. If you are confusing the spellings of two words, let's say there and there, effect and effect, that should not be done. There should be no mistakes in spellings, try to avoid them. Then avoid grammatical errors. For example, if you're using verb tenses, try to stick to the same verb tense. Do not switch between them. We've already discussed this in the writing component also, that the verb tense structure, it needs to be consistent throughout the sentence. Why do we emphasize on that? Because eventually when we are writing our essay, it would also help us to write sentences that are coherent, that are clear enough for the examiner to understand what the student is trying to explain in that particular paragraph. So please remember this, that organization is an important ingredient of your essay. Without organization, without the flow of arguments, your essay might not be, scoring well. So please keep this in mind. Okay, so writing is all about how skillfully did you craft your response. Is your essay structure clear? Does your essay have a clear thesis or claim? Are the sentences varied? Is your choice of words precise? Does the essay follow a logical progression of ideas? A logical progression, I've already told you that this is when whatever you're saying has supporting evidence from within the passage. So that logical progression needs to be there in your essay. Are the paragraphs, introduction, body, conclusion well crafted? Do they flow? Now over here, there are some questions, of course. I'll go through them. How skillfully did you craft your response? Is your essay structure clear? When I talk about the structure of the essay, guys, what I mean to say over here is that your paragraphs should be, you all know that every paragraph is based on a central idea. So try to keep a balance. When you're talking about a central idea, stick to that within your paragraph. You can give supporting evidence from within the passage, and you can state what you have analyzed. But then again, do not make abrupt changes to the paragraph, introducing too many ideas in the same paragraph. So this is the reason why we say that your structure should be very, very organized in the essay. Does your essay have a clear thesis or claim? What is a thesis? A thesis is the main message, the main theme of the passage. What is the passage based on? What is the message from the passage that the reader is getting? So this is the thesis or the main claim of the passage. Are the sentences changing? The sentences, when I say the sentences should be changing from one another over here, I do not mean to say that please try to introduce a new idea in every sentence. Of course, you can connect one sentence after the another. Previous sentences could be connected to the next sentences. Of course, the flow should be there, but there should be no repetition of ideas. When you've already stated something, there is no point of stating it again and again using different words or vocabulary, because it's just going to make your essay, your argument redundant. Please avoid doing that. There should be a variety in your sentences. Do not use the same words again and again. For example, if you know the word um, if you use the word interesting, try not to use that word again and again, because it would become monotonous for the examiner when he's going to go through your essay. So try not to do that, because that is going to make things difficult for you. As a student, try to use a variety of words, try to play around with words in a way that your ideas get across. Whoever is reading your checking your essay, your ideas are clear for that person to understand the message that you're trying to give through your essay. So, is your choice of words precise? Um, I've already focused on this earlier in the earlier sessions as well, that try not to make your sentences long just to use flowery language, good vocabulary. Try to keep it to the point, concise, meaningful, and impactful. The less the usage of words, the more meaningful your essay is going to be. uh, Essay has to have paragraphs: the introduction paragraph, the body paragraph, and then the conclusion paragraph. They should be well crafted, and they should have a flow. They should have organization from one paragraph to another. There should be smooth variation and transition. All right. So this was all about the breakdown, how the SAT essay is scored, what are the three different criteria, what does the examiner look for when he talks about these three criteria. Now, the text structure of the SAT essay. What exactly should your essay look like? So first of all, keeping in mind that your time is just 50 minutes, try to keep it short. Do not try to experiment anything at because experiments, if you're going to do them on the last moment, they would end up in a disaster. So keep it short and crisp. 250 to 400 words is the ideal word count for an essay. um, when I say 250 to 400 words, I'm not suggesting you to stick to a particular word limit, because it depends on you. At the end of the day, you are the judge. You are going to decide how many words you can easily manage to write in 50 minutes. Keeping in mind that you have to read the passage, you have to make summaries, you have to highlight the evidence, you have to look for the persuasive elements. So try to stick somewhere between 250 to 350 words. That's the ideal word count for an essay. When writing the essay, you must understand what the essay is all about. Find out how the author uses persuasive elements in his essay: pathos, ethos, and logos, because that will be part of the essay. Now, pathos, ethos, and logos, I'll tell you what these are. These are also persuasive elements, and in English literature, how we define these words, I'll tell you. But first thing is that you need to understand what the essay should be all about. What is the main claim that the author has focused on throughout the passage? Keep that in mind. Keeping that particular claim in mind, you base your reasons on why that claim should be believed. And of course, you take evidence from the passage. So the author definitely uses persuasive elements. And like I already mentioned, persuasive elements could include facts, statistics, they could include personal anecdotes, the authors or anybody that the author knows his personal experience, similes, metaphors, vivid language. We could also find out. We could also find out rhetorical questions that want to make the reader emotional when he's reading the passage. And then lastly, ethos, pathos, and logos. What are these, guys? Ethos are actually when you are trying to appeal the when you are trying to use the language in which the author is trying to establish his credibility. For example, If you read a passage in which the author says, because I'm a doctor, so this disease, from experience, I could say that this disease affects 20% of the patient's lungs. So this kind of information, it falls under the category of ethos. Why? Because when the doctor says, when the author says that I'm a doctor, and from my experience I can say that, this much, this is the percentage of lungs that is affected in a patient. So he's quoting a fact over here also, but he's also trying to make his claim believable by using ethos. So ethos is basically when the author is trying to establish his credibility with the help of some sort of evidence, very strong evidence, and that is what we call ethos. And then what is pathos? Pathos is basically emotional appeal, trying to emotionally, involve the reader in the passage and make the reader believe in what the author is saying. So that is emotional appeal to the reader's senses. And then logos. Logos are figures, statistics, facts. When you use numbers, that is logos, and those are actually logical facts that you would actually want to believe on. Some information that is presented with the help of a survey, through research, that also falls under this category. So this is about the persuasive elements. Then the next point. You will always have your introduction and conclusion, and you can throw in some figurative language, similes, metaphors, personification that you find in the passage and the roles they play in the passage. That is, if you still have sufficient time. So sometimes we tend to focus on the different words that appeal to our senses. When I'm reading something and I come across words that actually create a picture in my mind, I tend to focus more on those details. So this helps me in analyzing the information in a better way. So if you're going to quote some figurative language that you come across when you're reading a passage, you could also do that, because in a way that is also a persuasive element which is trying to convince you to believe in what the author is trying to state. All right, and then we have, you have to provide evidence as to why you think the author has made use of a particular technique. For example, if you say that the author makes use of a personal anecdote, you have to quote a phrase or a sentence from the passage where the author recounts his personal experience. When the author is talking about his own personal experience and you think that this information from the passage is credible enough to make his claim believable, and he has done justice in this part of his passage, please try to quote a line or anything from the passage that was mentioned when he was quoting his personal anecdote in the passage. So you should be quoting a line or a phrase from where he has stated details of his personal experience. So this is once again evidence-based writing. Whatever you're trying to analyze, you're providing evidence for it from the passage. Next, the essay question asks you to focus on the most relevant features of the passage, so it would be better to pick out something that is obvious, extremely essential. The essay question, it always asks you to focus on the most relevant, the most obvious features of the passage. So pick out something. I've already mentioned this, that do not look for implicit details, because it might be possible that you may be able to understand the information from the passage, but the examiner might not understand it. So try to stick to the details that are there, that are very clearly stated. Do not go into the depth of the information that's stated in the passage. Try to stick to the most obvious details. Your introduction should consist of a general statement of the author's central claim, followed by a summary of the points you're going to talk about, usually 3 points. Your introduction, your paragraph, that is the introductory paragraph, it has to have a general statement. What is a general statement? I'm going to tell this to you when you're going to look at the sample essay. And the author's central claim. By central claim, what I mean to say is the thesis, the main theme of the passage. Why is global warming affecting the polar ice caps? Or we could say the global warming is affecting animals and plants in a very negative manner. So, if this is the central claim of the author, how is he trying to use the evidence to support this central claim? So, your central claim should always be stated in your introductory paragraph. It is extremely important that you uh, give this message to the examiner that you have understood the passage, the central claim of the passage, the main message given in the passage, so that it gives a very good impression to the examiner right when he reads your first paragraph. Okay, and then followed by a summary of the points you're going to talk about. Since we have always focused on organization and flow in the essay, so whatever you're going to state in your introductory paragraph is what you're going to base your rest of the essay on. So for example, if you're talking about three persuasive elements that you're going to analyze that you found out in the passage, and you're going to analyze the central claim based on those three persuasive elements, so try to keep them in an order, mention them in an order in the paragraph, in the introductory paragraph. The introduction and conclusion do not give you any extra points or credit. It is just a means to give your essay a complete structure. Your conclusion should not include a summary of the passage, but of the points you have mentioned in your essay. Yes, I have suggested you to write an introductory paragraph and then a concluding paragraph. This is because it's going to give a very organized structure to your essay. But that doesn't mean that if the rest of the content of the essay is not based on valid arguments from the passage, you are still going to get a good score. This is just to give a structure to your essay, to your a flow to your arguments. But then again, it's not going to give you any extra credit if you're going to write the introductory paragraph, if you're going to write the concluding paragraph, if you're going to write the body paragraph. Again, like I said, the content matters at the end of the day, and not how you are dividing your ideas into different paragraphs. Your conclusion should not include a summary of the passage, but of the points you've mentioned in your essay. Now, when you're ending your essay, please make sure that you are not trying to give a summary of the entire passage. Like I've already stated, the main purpose of the SAT essay is not to summarize the passage, not to write the passage all over again in a short summary, but to analyze the argument presented in the passage. So when you're going to conclude your essay, make it very effective by trying to restate what you already mentioned on the top, the details, in a sentence or in two or three sentences, and then end your essay. So it's going to give a very nice impression when the examiner is going to come to the concluding paragraph of your essay, and he would feel that you have actually been able to understand the information, assimilate the idea, the main idea in the passage, and you are able to analyze your argument in a very organized manner. So please keep this in mind. And then, what the essay is not. This is also a very important part. First thing, guys, do not quote any outside information. I would like to emphasize on this again. All of the things that you're going to base your argument on, base your analysis on, the information should come from the passage. Please do not quote any outside information, any of your personal experiences, any of your personal opinions, because that is not what the SAT essay demands you to do. Okay, so first point, the task is not to simply state what the passage is about. Example, kittens. And it is not to share your personal opinion about the argument. For example, if you say, I agree that kittens are super cute. Now, this sentence is stating your personal opinion. And this is not what the essay requires of you. It basically wants to see what the author has stated in the passage and how you think it's going to make sense to you. It is going to be good enough for you to believe in the author's claim. So this is not supposed to be done. Your job, explain how the author builds the argument to persuade the reader. You need to identify the point that the author is making. Example, kittens are cuter than puppies, and for that and other reasons, people should adopt more of them. So this is you could say this is the point that the author has made. And then why do you think that whatever the author is saying makes sense? How does he make it credible? And then analyze how the author makes the point using examples drawn from nowhere but the passage itself. So, the same thing as I've already stated, that whatever the author says in the passage, he is going to provide a persuasive technique for that. He is going to talk about the evidence. So, please look for that evidence and analyze that evidence. And then, once again, guys, try to write your essay in a way that you're not using the first person point of view. You are not using words like I, me, myself. Avoid them. And then you should be using your opinions as a general audience, right? You could use the words the reader, you could use the pronoun we, us. So this is how you're supposed to craft your sentences using pronouns like we, us, the audience, the readers. These kind of words should be used when you are trying to present your argument in the essay. All right. So first, I'm going to go to the questions, and then I am going to be reading out and discussing an essay with you guys that scored a very nice score, and we would be discussing the details of that essay. Why did it score well? What was it that the examiner particularly liked in that essay? So we would be discussing that. So first, let me look at the questions. All right. So the first question that we have from one of you is, kindly again explain how to use vivid language, and is it the same as rhetorical devices? Okay, vivid language. I could give you an example of vivid language. Let's say if you read a sentence somewhere, uh, the mountain was covered with a blanket of ice. A blanket of ice. This is a metaphor, right? Ice definitely is not a blanket in actual, but just to create a picture in the mind of the reader, the author has used vivid language, a metaphor, to make the reader imagine something, to create an imagery, a picture in the minds of the reader. So this is also one of the ways to persuade the reader to believe in the author's claim. So this is what vivid language is like. And then sometimes we tend to use similes also, and if the author has used them, it may be like it was as cold as ice. Now when here you're trying to compare two things, you're trying to put two things together. So this is a simile when you're using the words like or as to compare two things. So this is also an example of vivid language. Once again, the reader is convinced to believe. Vivid language is when the reader is using his senses, the hearing sense, the touch sense, the smelling sense, or the sense of sight. And the senses are basically being used when the author has used vivid language in his essay, and the reader could actually imagine something, could actually see something in his mind or hear something. So this is when the reader is going to be convinced of the idea of the author, because the vivid language is convenient for him to understand and makes the claim believable also. So this is an example of vivid language. And is it the same as rhetorical devices? Rhetorical devices are basically the techniques in which the author has used language in an effective way. So rhetorics is all about that, a rhetorical question. So in a way, yes, vivid language is a persuasive element or a rhetorical device. But then again, vivid language is a persuasive element that should be an option when you think that other persuasive elements are not convincing enough, or if you have enough time to write about the vivid language and how it affects the reader's mind or emotions, or it affects the reader to believe in the claims of the author. So please make sure that you know how to analyze what are the most prominent, the most convincing details used in the passage. Next question. How much part the effective words, authentic vocabulary play in writing? Uh, I have already told you that using good vocabulary in an essay is a good idea. It is definitely a good idea. But the problem is that if you're going to focus too much on vocabulary and you're going to put in too many beautiful words to impress the examiner, what you are doing over here is just focusing on the words, but you're not focusing on the structure, on the argument stated in the passage, or you're not focusing on the sentence structure, you're not focusing on the flow of the argument, you're not focusing on the details given in the passage, you're not analyzing. So that is when you're focusing too much on the writing part, but you're not focusing on the other two criteria, reading and analysis. So you need to keep a balance. अच्छे वर्ड जरूर यूज करो, आई वुड से बिल्कुल यूज करो, हर पैराग्राफ में एक अच्छा वर्ड यूज कर लो, दो अच्छे वर्ड्स, एनीथिंग दैट यू फील इज अप्रोप्रिएट व्हेन यू आर राइटिंग अ सेंटेंस एट दैट पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम, उधर जिस वर्ड की सेंस बन रही है उसको जरूर यूज करो. बट देन अगेन इतना ज्यादा मुश्किल मत कर दो कि जो एग्जामिनर है ही इज जस्ट गोइंग टू लुक एट योर लैंग्वेज and he would not find anything concrete in terms of the analysis of your essay, of the passage in your essay. So please keep that in mind कि vocabulary balanced style के साथ use करो. Do not put too much of vocabulary words just to leave an impression. अच्छे तरीके से यूज करने का मतलब वो है जो अभी हम एक सैम्पल एसे में भी देखेंगे, उसमें स्टूडेंट ने कहीं बहुत सिंपल लैंग्वेज यूज की है, and in some of the sentences he has used very nice words also, but keeping it simple, keeping it concise, and making and impact on the examiner in a way that he has played around with words in a very balanced manner. So we look at that and you will have a better idea. Okay, next question is, what is the difference between persuasive elements and references? References की जब हम बात करते हैं, references basically, we could say, when the reader is when the author is referring to a research based information, he is referring to an experience of a person, so वो एक reference हो जाता है. Persuasive elements की category में ही reference भी fall करता है. So when we are talking about a reference, it could be based on imagery, it could be based on a memory, it could be based on an information that has been provided through research. So reference is a part of the persuasive element that a reader might come across when he's reading a passage, and it is another way to make the claim convincing when the author is trying to present information in the passage. Then the next question is, what percentage can be quoted from the passage to support our point of view? Well, I would say that in every persuasive element that you have observed, that you have picked out from the passage, for example, let's say if you have observed that the author has used statistics, if you have observed that the author has used a rhetorical question to make the reader emotional, if you have observed that the author has used a personal anecdote, इन तीनों चीजों की एविडेंस आपने जब जिस जिस पैराग्राफ में आप इनको मेंशन करोगे उसके साथ पैसेज से प्रोवाइड कर दो, because then if you're just going to talk about it in the essay, the author might think कि इसको, the examiner might think कि इसको इस चीज की एविडेंस तो नहीं मिली है, लेकिन इसने ओवरऑल एक ओवरव्यू दे दिया. So the best idea over here is, the best approach that you could use is कि थोड़ा सा एविडेंस पैसेज में से जरूर दे दो. जरूरी नहीं कि पूरा पूरा पैराग्राफ कोट करो, a line, a phrase with every persuasive element that you came across when you read the passage. It could be one quotation in a paragraph, it could be a phrase that you found which was effective in the passage in a paragraph. So it depends. कोई percentage नहीं है. It depends on how you are presenting your argument. So please उसके accordingly आप लोगों ने balance करना है. Next question. Can you explain the paragraph structure, like how many lines per paragraph and how many paragraphs? For this, I would say that just wait for a few minutes. We would be going to the sample student essay, and then you would see कि कितने ideally paragraphs होने चाहिए. आप लोग उसी के accordingly अपना passage जो है, अपना essay जो है वो practice कर सकते हो. Ideally, what I would suggest is कि एक तो introductory paragraph होना चाहिए, 5 to 6 lines. 4 to 5 lines भी हो सकता है. That depends, of course, on the content, the amount of words that you're writing. Each person writes on his own way, in his own, in his own way of writing language. So it depends on how many words you want to write within a paragraph. It could be 4 to 5 lines, it could be 3 to 4 lines, it could be 5 to 6 lines in a paragraph also. And it could be more than that as well. So it depends. But keep in mind 50 minutes, the time. क्योंकि टाइम जब आप लोगों के माइंड में रहेगा उससे ये होगा कि आप लोगों को आइडिया हो जाएगा कि हम लोगों ने किस तरह से हर चीज को टाइम अलॉट करना है. पैसेज को रीड करने में कितना टाइम होना चाहिए, पैसेज के एनालिसिस में उसकी समरी हाईलाइट करने में पर्सुएसिव एलिमेंट्स कहाँ कहाँ यूज हुए, to highlight those, all of those things. For that also you need to allot your time to that. So there's no particular ideal length for a paragraph. It all depends on how you structure your essay. Some of the paragraphs could be lengthy, then you could have a short paragraph. Body paragraphs could be more than one, of course, because if you are presenting an analysis of 3 persuasive elements within the passage, so of course you might want to put 3 body paragraphs or maybe 2. So it depends, right? How many citations from essay can we include in a paragraph while discussing any one form of devices? I've already answered this question that ideally there should be one reference from the passage. You can quote, you can directly quote it, or you can paraphrase it, you can write a phrase from the passage. But then again, two भी हो सकती हैं, one भी हो सकता है, but बहुत ज़्यादा content नहीं होना चाहिए passage का. In order for the examiner to believe in what you're stating in your essay, even one direct quotation or one reference from the passage is also enough, as long as you have stated it clearly that where did you take the evidence from, where did you find this persuasive technique. So then the reader, the examiner would know, and the reader would have created an impact on the examiner. So us tarah se usko clear ho jayega. So this has to be taken care of depending on your choice, depending on the time that you have. So that's about the questions. Now I'm going to be sharing a student response with you all, and we would be looking at what does it look like, what are the techniques that the student has used in the essay, and how has he made his essay credible enough for you to understand, for the examiner to understand and believe in his information, right? So let me just quickly open it for you. Okay, so here is an essay prompt, as you can see, and let me just zoom it in for you all. Okay, so guys, this is the essay prompt, and as it says in the beginning, as you read the passage below, consider how Paul Bogard uses. Now he's the author, Paul Bogard, right? And this is how the prompt of the essay begins. I would want you to very carefully focus on the minute details in the passage, and then also focus on what the student response is. I am going to read it out for you, slow and clear, so that you understand and you're able to focus on the most important features of the essay. So as you read the passage below, consider how Paul Bogard uses evidence such as facts or examples to support claims, reasoning to develop ideas and to connect claims and evidence, stylistic or persuasive elements such as word choice or appeals to emotion to add power to the ideas expressed. कोई फैलिसी नहीं होनी चाहिए, ऑथर ने आइडियाज अपने से इमेजिन करके लिख दिए तो ऑफ कोर्स वो बिलीवेबल नहीं होंगे. आई एम श्योर कि हर ऑथर ने अपने क्लेम को बिलीवेबल बनाने के लिए ही मस्ट हैव यूज सम सपोर्टिंग material such as a fact or a statistic or some sort of reasoning or a reference to a research based information. So all of those things would be there in the passage, or some of those persuasive elements would be there in the passage. You have to choose and select the best ones and the most obvious ones from the passage. Okay, so this is a little information, like it's like pretext of the passage. Adapted from Paul Bogard, Let There Be Dark, 2012, by Los Angeles Times, originally published December 21, 2012. So the name of the passage is Let There Be Dark. And the author is, of course, Paul Bogart, gives some background information where it was published, when it was published. All right. So here is the passage. It begins over here. And of course, you're going to read the passage before you do anything else. At my family's cabin on a Minnesota lake, I knew woods so dark that my hands disappeared before my eyes. I knew night skies. Sorry, let me zoom it. I knew night skies in which meteors left smoky trails across sugary spreads of stars. Notice the word sugary. Now, this is an example of vivid language, it's a metaphor. But now, when 8 of 10 children born in the United States will never know a sky dark enough for the Milky Way. Now, this is a statistic. This is a fact based on numbers, based on figures. So, this is one way of making the claim that the author is going to state believable. I worry we are rapidly losing night's natural darkness before realizing its worth. This winter solstice, as we cheer the day's gradual movement back toward light, let us also remember the irreplaceable value of darkness. All life evolved to the steady rhythm of bright days and dark nights. Today, though, when we feel the closeness of nightfall, we reach quickly for a light switch. And too little darkness, meaning too much artificial light at night, spells trouble for all. Already, the World Health Organization classifies working the night shift as a probable human carcinogen, and the American Medical Association has voiced its unanimous support for light pollution reduction efforts and glare reduction efforts at both the national and state levels. Once again, this is research-based information. The World Health Organization has provided some information, and this is you could say this is a persuasive element, a way in which the author is trying to involve the reader into believing his claim. Our bodies need darkness to produce the hormone melatonin, which keeps certain cancers from developing, and our bodies need darkness for sleep. Once again, a fact. Sleep disorders have been linked to diabetes, obesity, cardiovascular disease, and depression. And recent research suggests one main cause of short sleep is long light. Whether we work at night or simply take our tablets, notebooks, and smartphones to bed, there isn't a place for this much artificial light in our lives. Once again, he's trying to make the reader emotional, quoting facts about the routine of people and how they are deprived of natural darkness. So he's focusing on that. The rest of the world depends on darkness as well, including nocturnal and crepuscular species of birds, insects, mammals, fish, and reptiles. Some examples are well known. The 400 species of birds that migrate at night in North America, the sea turtles that come ashore to lay their eggs, and some are not, such as the bats that save American farmers, billions in pest control, and the moths that pollinate 80% of the world's flora. Ecological light pollution is like the bulldozer of the night. You can see that he has quoted statistics and facts in this paragraph also. So he says that light pollution is like the bulldozer of the night, wrecking habitat and disrupting ecosystems several billion years in the making. Simply put, without darkness, Earth's ecology would collapse. In today's crowded, louder, more fast-paced world, night's darkness can provide solitude, quiet and stillness, qualities increasingly in short supply. Every religious tradition has considered darkness invaluable for a soulful life, and the chance to witness the universe has inspired artists, philosophers, and everyday stargazers since time began. In a world awash with electric light, how would Van Gogh have given the world his starry night? Who knows what this vision of the night sky might inspire in each of us, in our children or grandchildren. Once again, guys, you see that the paragraph is ending with a rhetorical question. a question that may force the reader to think about what he is doing, what is it that he's doing wrong, and it forces the reader to get, to feel like is supposed to take an action. So this is also one way of convincing the reader. You can see that the author has provided good evidence in his passage. Yet, all over the world, our nights are growing brighter. In the United States and Western Europe, the amount of light in the sky increases an average of about 6% every year. Computer images of the United States at night, based on NASA photographs, show that what was a very dark country as recently as the 1950s is now nearly covered with a blanket of light. Much of this light is wasted energy, which means wasted dollars. Those of us over 35 are perhaps among the last generation to have known truly dark nights. Even the northern lake where I was lucky to spend my summers has seen its darkness diminish. The northern lake experience that he quoted is an example of a personal anecdote. And then once again in this paragraph, there's a lot of statistical evidence. There is a word blanket of light, once again vivid language example. And then he has also used emotional statements. He's also used pathos to make the reader emotional. So let's go on and see what the passage says. It doesn't have to be this way. Light pollution is readily within our ability to solve using new lighting technologies and shielding existing lights. Already, many cities and towns across North America and Europe are changing to LED street lights, which offer dramatic possibilities for controlling wasted light. Other communities are finding success with simply turning off portions of their public lighting after midnight. Even Paris, the famed city of light, which already turns off its monument lighting after 1 a.m., will this summer start to require its shops, offices, and buildings and public buildings to turn off lights after 2 a.m. Though primarily designed to save energy, such reductions in light will also go far in addressing light pollution. But we will never truly address the problem of light pollution until we become aware of the irreplaceable value and beauty of the darkness we are losing. Once again, facts have been stated, emotional appeal has been used. So that was the passage, guys. Now let's read the essay prompt and find out what you are supposed to do. Write an essay in which you explain how Paul Bogart builds an argument to persuade his audience that natural darkness should be preserved. This is the central claim, the main idea, the theme, or you could say the thesis of the passage, that natural darkness should be preserved. This is the message that the author has given through his passage, right? In your essay, analyze how Bogart uses one or more of the features in the directions that precede the passage, or features of your own choice to strengthen the logic and persuasiveness of his argument. Be sure that your analysis focuses on the most relevant feature of the passage. Once again, focus on the most obvious details. Your essay should not explain whether you agree with Bogart's claims, but rather explain how Bogart builds an argument to persuade his audience. Now, this is one of the most important lines that I would want to stress on. Your essay should not explain whether you agree, whether you believe Bogart's claims, but rather it should explain how the author, has built an argument to persuade his audience. So, guys, please keep this in mind that when you are providing an analysis of the author's argument, your opinion, your personal ideas, your personal agreement is not required in the essay. Now, let's go to the student response and see what is something that the student has done so well that we should all be following when it comes to practicing our SAT essay. Look at the student response. Clearly, you can see some paragraphs, and of course, the first one is the introductory paragraph. Let's read this. In response to our world's growing reliance on artificial light, Writer Paul Bogart argues that natural darkness should be preserved in his article, Let There Be Dark. He effectively builds his argument by using a personal anecdote, allusions to art and history, and rhetorical questions. Allusions means reference to art and history. Now, here he has notice that in the introductory paragraph, he has introduced the name of the topic, Let There Be Dark. He has also mentioned the central claim of the topic, that natural darkness should be preserved. And then what else has the student added? The student has added a summary statement in which he has mentioned the persuasive elements separated with commas that he is going to be basing his argument on, his analysis on. So he is going to be focusing on a personal anecdote, allusions to art and history, and rhetorical questions. And when I was reading out the passage to you, I also quoted I also mentioned where was the rhetorical question. I also mentioned that he has used his personal anecdote where he mentioned the Minnesota lake, and then allusions to art and history when he mentioned the Starry Night painting by the famous painter Van Gogh. All right. So now let's look at the first paragraph. The first paragraph, guys, should ideally begin with the personal anecdote because this is the first thing that's mentioned in the sentence. So the first body paragraph should begin with the analysis of the personal anecdote. So let's read this paragraph. Bogart starts his article off by recounting a personal story, a summer spent on a Minnesota lake where there was woods so dark that his hands disappeared before his eyes. See, a quotation has been inserted from the passage, a direct quotation in the speech marks. In telling this brief anecdote, Bogart challenges the audience to remember a time where they could fully amass themselves in natural darkness, void of artificial light. By drawing in his readers with a personal encounter about night darkness, the author means to establish the potential for beauty, glamour, and awe inspiring mystery that genuine darkness can possess. He builds his argument for the preservation of natural darkness by reminiscing for his readers a first hand encounter that proves the irreplaceable value of darkness. This anecdote provides a baseline of sorts for readers to find credence with the author's claims. Notice that the student has used the word readers. The student has not used the word I. Instead, he has used the word audience. He has used the words like readers, and he is not referring to the first person narrative over here. Keep this in mind. And he has also mentioned that how this personal anecdote leaves an impact on the reader. He has used some very nice sentences, some very nice phrases to begin the sentences. For example, by drawing in his reader's attention with a personal encounter about night darkness, and he builds his argument for the preservation of natural darkness. This anecdote provides a baseline of sorts for readers. So he's basically mentioning how this personal anecdote is going to make the author's claim believable, and how is the reader going to be convinced to believe in what the author is saying. So this is what a general analysis of the passage should look like, and this is the first persuasive element that has been analyzed in this particular paragraph. So the student has said that this personal anecdote was used effectively. Now the next paragraph, guys, keep in mind that the next paragraph, as we already read in the introductory paragraph, that there's going to be a personal anecdote and then allusions to art and history. So the next paragraph should be about art and history, allusions or references to art and history, because we are keeping a flow and we are basing it on the structure of what is being, information is being provided into introductory paragraph. Bogart's argument is also furthered by his use of allusion to art, Van Gogh's Starry Night, once again in speech marks, and modern history, Paris' reputation as the city of light. By first referencing Starry Night, a painting generally considered to be undoubtedly beautiful, Bogart establishes that the natural magnificence of stars in a dark sky is definite. A world absent of access artificial light could potentially hold the key to a grand, glorious night sky, like Van Gogh's, according to the writer. Now, the student is trying to use words of his own, but nothing that he says is going out of context. of the passage. So whatever details he's giving, he is just analyzing the details, the persuasive element from the passage, how well it is being used, what is making it convincing, how is it, believable. This urges the readers to weigh the disadvantages of our world consumed by unnatural vapid lighting. Furthermore, Bogarde alludes means refers to Paris as the famed city of light. He then goes on to state how Paris has been taking steps to exercise more sustainable lighting practices. Once again, the sentence is based on the example quoted about Paris in the passage. By doing this, Bogarde creates a dichotomy between Paris' traditionally alluded to name and the reality of what Paris is becoming. No longer the city of light, but more so the city of light before 2 a.m. This furthers his line of argumentation because it shows how steps can be and are being taken to preserve natural darkness. It shows that even a city that is literally famous for being constantly lit can practically address light pollution in a manner that preserves the beauty of both the city itself and the universe as a whole. Once again, a very smart choice of words, not going out of context, not providing any outside information, still focusing on the analysis of the persuasive element and sticking to the main ideas in the passage. Now, the last body paragraph, guys, the last persuasive element, which was a rhetorical question. Finally, Bogarde makes subtle yet efficient use of rhetorical questioning to persuade his audience that natural darkness preservation is essential. He asks the readers to consider what the vision of the night sky might inspire in each of us, in our children or grandchildren, in a way that brutally plays to each of our emotions. By asking this question, Bogarde draws out heartfelt ponderance from his readers about the affecting power of an untainted night sky. This rhetorical question tugs at the heart of the reader's heartstrings, while the reader may have seen an unobscured night skyline before. The possibility that their child or grandchild will never get the chance sways them to see as Bogarde sees. So here Bogarde has made the reader emotional that his future generations might never see a night sky full of stars. This strategy is definitely an appeal to pathos, forcing the audience to directly face an emotionally charged inquiry that will surely spur some kind of response, some kind of action by the reader. By doing this, Bogarde develops his argument, adding guttural power to the idea that the issue of maintaining natural darkness is relevant and multifaceted. So, this was about the rhetorical question, how it was effective, and then the last paragraph. Writing as a reaction to his disappointment that artificial light has largely permeated the presence of natural darkness, Paul Bogarde argues that we must preserve true unaffected darkness. He builds this claim by making use of a personal anecdote, allusions, and rhetorical questioning. So, guys, this was the last paragraph. Once again, he has stated the central claim of the passage. He has stated that natural darkness should be preserved and how artificial light has taken place of natural darkness in a huge part of our lives. Paul Bogarde argues that we must preserve true unaffected darkness, and then he once again mentions the persuasive element. So this was the concluding paragraph. Now this is where the student has scored a 4 in reading, 4 on analysis, and 4 on writing. You must have noticed that he has not used a lot of flowery language, yet he has done justice to his argument, and he has proven that he has understood the main idea of the passage well, and he has analyzed the claims in a way that that could make the examiner believe that he has understood the passage. So guys, this was all about the SAT essay component. I hope I was able to make it clear to you guys, and inshallah, when you're going to practice now, keep in mind the student response that got a very good score, a perfect score, and inshallah, I'll see you in the next class. Take care, everyone. Thank you so much.